Illuminati.
I just want to shake some sense into you kids.
Hello, it is us, the angry or pissed off Gen Xers, and we're back to shake more sense into you kids. It is I, your host, J.Ishiro, Finny, author and alien in a human suit, and with me tonight, as always, is...
Janelle is here.
Yeah, I'm here. I make alcohol. I bitch about X-Men. My latest bitch is going to be about Dune. But I want to hear about this Tim Pool
did you
shit
see
first.
it?
No. I did a deep dive, and I found out what they changed, and dear God. But no, we're going to talk about Tim Pool tonight. Maybe we can do a morning rant tomorrow. It's bad. It's really fucking bad.
Okay.
I'm Ron Splitthorn. I bitch about everything because I'm old. Get off my fucking lawn.
Yeah.
Get off this fucking lawn. You and your dog, too. Hi, everyone. I'm Kat, the night editor. I just got off work, and I'm a bit salty, so it should be fun.
It's going to be great tonight.
The boob goddess has spoken.
In fact, Rolf, did you get my message on Twitter today?
No, I've been kind of sort of. I haven't really been looking at Twitter that much.
The universe of weirdness has opened up and has gifted you with a throw pillow for veal flicking.
Oh my God. That's right. I saw that. You found a throw pillow for the base on Amazon of all places?
Yes, and it's specifically for the training ground for the base.
Holy shit. How old is it?
I don't know. I found it on Amazon. You can buy it right now.
Oh my God.
Your signal's kind of
It's coming in and out?
a little.
I don't know.
No, not you, Raltz. Cat is.
Well, I think that
There you go.
That's my computer. There we go. Okay.
You sound fine now.
But yeah, I found that and it's like, wow.
Okay, I'm looking this shit up right now. I am so curious.
It's a fucking throw pillow.
As the banner said, we were going to talk a little bit about going nuclear with Tim Pool, because
Okay, before we even get into this, how a nuclear weapon works is the compression of uranium. There's more to it that causes it to fuse together and creates fission for the atomics, fusion for the nuclear. And you have two styles. You have the implosion method and the gun method. Things like the Davy Crockett and some of the W series shells use implosion. Some of the W series shells and a few other weapons use the gun style, depending on what you need. For example, the small and medium atomic demolition mines use the compression style. And they got those. This is how small they got the tech. You can fit it in an army rucksack. Not a rucksack, but an army duffel bag. That's how small the US got it. The Davy Crockett was about this, a little bit bigger than a basketball. And
wow.
had a 2-mile range. Now, an atomic and nuclear weapons depend on the explosion is such massive force. It's registered in the kilotons, thousands of tons of TNT. 1,000 kilograms. A kiloton is 1,000 tons of TNT. The one dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were roughly in the 18 to 25 range. I'd have to look it up. I used to know it by heart. I don't anymore because I'm old and don't care. Now, remember, if you look at that, anything that was a modern structure survived. If you read, there's a little green book you can buy that's two survivors' tales of people, one in each city. Buildings survived in the fireball. Okay, the majority of that city had been bombed to fuck. Both those cities had been bombed to fuck anyway, and were not up to Western construction. Okay, so what you get is first of all, you get the flash. With the flash comes your initial radiation cascade. Next up is the overpressure wave. I can't remember. Thermal pulse is ahead of the overpressure wave. Then you get the thermal pulse. Now, the thermal pulse is incredibly damaging. When they did the tests in New Mexico, black people in the A and B ring burst into flame. And that is because the dark skin allowed for a higher uptake of the radiation, and they literally caught on fire.
Holy
The guys in the A range, the majority of them were dead within 24 hours. And remember, this is when you see those videos of those guys all sitting in a huge ring, and you can see the atomic explosion. They're sitting unprotected from a ground burst. And another test in an air burst. Guys in the B ring, if they had dark clothing with nothing white underneath them, they had severe burns. White clothing reflected enough of the thermal pulse that they just got light burns. C ring and beyond was survivable. Especially if you were black. If you were black, you might survive. But A and B ring, if you were black, you burst into flame. Congratulations. Atomic weaponry is racist. Okay, the thermal pulse is strong enough that it will cause third-degree burns to exposed skin. Then's the overpressure wave, and it's measured in standard PSI. The overpressure wave, depending on the tonnage, and this is not everybody shows it as this direct line straight up. If you double the explosive weight, the net explosive weight, to go from 20 kilotons to 40 kilotons, it doubles the range. That is not true. These people going, because they did a 2 megaton test and it created a crater 0.8 kilometers wide, which sounds impressive until you realize that's 800 meters, 8 football fields wide. 2.5 megatons. That's not that big. But they then said 20, the civilians say 20 megatons will create one 8 kilometers wide. That's not true. Do your area of a circle math and you will quickly discover it's not true. But anyway, the overpressure wave at a significant, close enough, usually within the fireball, will destroy reinforced concrete. However, the overpressure wave, because of your area of a circle and how pressure works, drops off dramatically with distance because you've got explosive force pushing a solid wave of air. It's like concrete when it hits. And it drops off pretty quickly. So the weapon depends. And then what happens when the overpressure wave collapses? This is where you get the mushroom cloud. This is how fast all this is. When the initial overpressure wave that actually creates a vacuum because of how intense the explosion is, when that collapses is how it pulls the mushroom cloud up into its stereotypical shape. The difference between where everybody goes, oh, that huge explosion must have been a nuke. If it's lacking that little cone just down from the mushroom top, if it's lacking that cone, it is not an atomic or nuclear detonation. The vapor cone is extremely important for recognized. So you have flash, thermal pulse, overpressure wave. That's your damage. Now, in the 1980s, the M1 Abrams was determined to be able to take a 15 megaton hit at less than 500 meters, and the crew would survive and the tank could remain in operation. Think about that. 15 fucking megatons to the forward glacis. Of course, the crew's welded inside and they're never coming out, and they're going to die of radiation poisoning. But that still gave them 72 hours to fight. 168th Armored Division was actually proud of that fact that they'd be welded into their tanks. They planned on parking their tanks in Moscow because you can't kill dead men. The other thing is depleted uranium is extremely outside radiation resistant, so that provided additional shielding. Now, when you get to modern cities, a hurricane, a major class hurricane, class 3, class 4, class 5 hurricanes are like a slow motion nuclear detonation. I mean, they actually have studied the effects of hurricanes to see the effects on modern construction estimates for nuclear weapons. Oh, the other thing a nuke does is, depending on how it hits, airburst isn't quite as bad, but a ground burst can literally, causes earthquakes, causes earth tremors. So that's part of the weapon. The radiation cascade is part of the weapon. Massive burst. That's where your neutron weapons come on. How people that say they were never successfully tested, that is wrong. They were successfully tested in 1978. It was it was a somewhat clandestine, and the French tested one in 1996.
That was a neutron device?
One of them was a neutron. Now, what neutron does is it neutrinos, and basically a fast radiation cascade that kills complex organisms, animals, humans, plants. Plants don't give a shit. Plants are like, oh, cool. And it leaves the buildings, and the radiation decays quickly. Your average radiation for your standard ICBM class was designed so that every 20 days the radiation would halve, which means pretty quickly you can go out into it. Your biggest threat from fallout, brush that shit off. Don't let it sit on you. Don't rub it on your face. Please don't put it in your hand and masturbate with it. Brush it off. Brush it off quick. Your initial rainstorms, your initial rainstorms will be black because of all the uptake material from the cloud dispersing. So, and will be radioactive. With that, tactical nuclear weapons were designed for the Eastern Front. They're also designed for the plains of America. The current prevailing thought at the time was the Russians would hop the pole, fight their way through Canadian air defense, which at the time Canadian air defense was top notch. They'd fight their way through the air defense and drop their tank units in the Midwest. Yes, you can drop an M1 at the time. You could drop from the 50s on, you could drop a tank out of the back of a C5 Galaxy. The Russians could drop theirs. Now, down in the plains of Western Germany and through the Fulda Gap was going to be an irradiated hellscape within 5 minutes. The initial launches would have taken place from Hawk Hill on Vielflicken. The initial plan was a 2.5 megaton on the eastern side of the gap. Roll through that, Ivan. It was believed that Russian tanks didn't have adequate radiation shielding. The M1 did, so we could drive right through it. The thing was because the Russians had so many tanks, the idea was they would Zerg rush us, we'd nuke spam them back. Davy Crockett's atomic demolition mines, short-range ballistic missiles such as the Hawk, and turned everything into a radioactive hellscape. Short-range, intermediate-range missiles, whole 9 yards. So the tactical ones were literally designed to stop tank rushes. Infantry are like cockroaches. Infantry are amazingly hard to kill. In the tests in the late 50s, when these guys dug into standard foxholes with overhead cover, the guys that were inside the dust cloud, when they took proper precautions, sat down, opened their mouths, the whole 9 yards, they didn't even get ruptured eardrums. They were able to come out and reach their objective in the middle of the fucking hot crater. So infantry is like cockroaches. So nobody planned on using nukes on masses of infantry because, fuck. The most common thing they found out during the 1950s tests on American soldiers is you lay down, head toward the blast so your helmet takes the radiation. You interlace your hands over your neck, lay on your rifle, and you're laying down. The majority of the blast will travel over you because blast waves are like water. They take the path of least resistance. So it was determined optimum if you're caught out in the open. And actually, you kind of want to be in the open because they told you if you're too close, the cinder block wall you're hiding behind is now shrapnel. So your best bet is just to drop and cover. The other good thing that soaks up everything is landscape. Dirt is fucking amazing. Dirt is the best thing for ballistics. Anything. Dirt is great. So if you can, dive in a fucking ditch. It sounds stupid, but the tests prove that dudes who laid down suffered. They didn't get picked up and bounced. They didn't get snatched up and ripped into pieces. They just laid there.
So while my parents were snickering about duck and cover, that was actually true.
Duck and cover. What the big thing was, they had those heavy curtains. They closed the curtains so you don't get glass, and you ducked and covered under your desk. And if the roof collapsed, your desk, because remember back then they weren't made of fucking wishes and Chinesium. They were made of tubular steel. They were made of steel or heavy wood or tubular aluminum, which is incredibly structurally sound. The roof collapses, the desks hold, the kids survive. Some places, like in the Midwest, because they have the tornado hallways, reinforced cinder block, special designs, the kids would all move into the hallway. Sounds stupid, will work. The stupidest things fucking work. Now, you will have all kind of experts come crawling out of the woodwork saying, oh, well, I don't give a fuck what you studied, okay? I spent 3 fucking weeks learning about these things. I stood in a fucking crater in New Mexico at one point. Because if you didn't stand in the crater, you fail. And you go home and you go to some other shitty fucking, you go to some shitty fucking unit.
Well, speaking of experts crawling out of the woodwork, let's start with the first. Let's start with the first video from Beanie Boy.
Let's talk about the prospect of nuclear war in a World War III scenario. I think it's highly likely. You know, a lot of people want to say mutually assured destruction will prevent the use of nuclear weapons. Wrong, I say, wrong. You see, most people don't understand what nuclear weapons are, and they assume we're talking about Moscow launching intercontinental ballistic missiles into outer space, which then deploy several warheads and pepper the eastern seaboard. Yeah, that seems very, very unlikely. Unless, of course, the U.S. actually invades Russia.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. First of all, what he's talking about is a MIRV, multiple individual reentry vehicles. Not all ICBMs are MIRVs. Now, and it doesn't deploy them in space. It actually deploys them on the way in. Now, the Russians looked at the salt shaker approach. They would do it in low orbit. Well, we didn't know exactly what they were going to do. There's 2 theories, 3 actually. 3 theories. One, you do it in a high orbit and you drop them. Now, the problem with it is once you deploy them, you've got to trust their internal guidance systems, because by the time they get there, you've already got the detonations that have turned the EM field into fucking hash. So each of those has to be separately shielded because of their size and weight. They can't be that heavily shielded. You want to keep, so American theory with our advanced guidance system said, we want to keep them in the shell as long as possible. Now, the most damaging effect is called the starburst. You have 5 smaller ones, roughly in the 250 to 450 kiloton, go off in a ring where the damage rings don't quite touch. Now, those go off at a lower altitude than the center one. The center one is about 1.5 to 5 megatons, depending on which type of missile you're talking about. They all the bottom ring detonates first by about a half second to a second and a half. That's when the middle one goes off. That reignites the other ones and turns the entire thing into a fuck circus of hellfire. That is a standard star cluster.
Hellfire. God, I love you, Rolf.
Wow.
Now, in order to hit other cities, the problem with the reentry vehicle, well, is you have to use smaller payloads. Now, smaller payloads are great. I mean, we're talking relative once you got into the tritium jackets, the strontium jackets, hydrogen weapons. You know, you could buff them up pretty high. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. Now he's like, oh, that's pretty unlikely. Dumbass. That was the standard design starting about 1963. The Minuteman series, the Russians did theirs. Now, interesting point, the Russians never had a successful test of their MIRV design.
Did not know that.
It didn't fully deploy. It deployed 2 or 3. They went off course. Some of them broke apart. The problem, what he doesn't realize is, okay, let's say you break it in high orbit. Have anybody ever done any type of video game or watched any TV show where they do reentry? What's your big problem? Heat. Your protective stuff, your protective shielding is heavy. It's ceramic and it's fucking heavy as shit. That's why you don't want to deploy in high orbit, because coming in you have heat and you have turbulence that throws everything off. And then remember, when these go off, you've probably already got detonations. So you've got shockwave. competing shock waves traveling through the upper stratosphere. Releasing at a height is non-optimal. That is not your optimum launch. Your optimums are your high altitude, low orbit. You want to pop the shell at about 250,000 feet. Anywhere from 80,000 to 250,000 feet. You want to detonate anywhere between 5,000 meters and 50,000 meters, depending on the weapon. Your small peewees, like a Davy Crockett, if you had to fire it directly up, you want to pop that bastard at about 1,000 meters, because that'll give enough time for the shock wave to propagate. So what he's talking about is actually the viable strategy. Russians were going to use MIRVs to oversaturate our air defenses. They were worried since the 1950s that we could intercept them. Interception of ICBMs has been an Air Force target goal since the 1950s. There are rumors. It's never. They're not going to tell us if it's true or not, but there are rumors that some jets can get them if they're low enough. Now remember, jets have a ceiling, and so the Russians countered that by having theirs pop above the ceiling. The ceiling is not as high for jets as many people think. I mean, the SR-71 is one thing, but an F-22 is completely different. I don't remember the ceiling. It's really not that high when you're talking about these kind of weapons.
The ceiling for the F-22 actually isn't actually, from what I understand, though, the impressive one was the F-15 Eagle, and they could shoot satellites down with that.
The F-15 Eagle was a fucking champ. Now, of course, that's what the U.S. is willing to show and admit to. Now, when you have the MIRV coming in, it's, like the scene from War Games where it shows one line come in and that turns into 5. That's actually the plan. And you want to do that probably low orbit. The other problem is if you do it in high orbit, you don't get the benefit of the shielding of the atmosphere. So you better line it with gold foil or you're going to get it fried. And remember, by this time, there's already radiation cascades from other missiles going off. So Beanie Boy is stupid that World War III is, mutually assured destruction. If you want to know how dickheaded it got by the 1970s, they were planning on nuking the Pacific and Atlantic kelp beds. Why? Because fuck you and your canoe. Okay, yeah. They were planning on literally, subs that were underneath the Arctic ice pack. There was 1 or 2 that had missions to hit the bottom of the ice pack with atomic torpedoes. Why? Because fuck you. That's why. The Amazon rainforest was estimated to take 3 or 4 hits. Why? Because fuck you. That's why. Australia was going to take some because they danced around and bragged that nobody was targeting them. The U.S. and Russia both targeted it. Japan, well, eat a dick. China, eat a dick. Everybody gets one. I think we had close to, the unofficial numbers I saw was like 6,500 ICBMs. ICBMs alone. Everybody got to have some. Mutually assured destruction also involved, oh my God, it was just fucking ridiculous. Mutually assured destruction was such things as missiles that didn't deploy nukes, but rather dropped radioactive material into large water basins, such as the Great Lakes, because eat a dick. There was also they plan to do it to California. We plan to do it to their coasts, and that is when you use a sub to detonate a nuclear weapon beneath the ocean in the 2.2 megaton or higher. It creates a fucking tsunami. Enjoy that. And you fire it from a torpedo. It's got about 1.5 miles range. The sub better fucking actually, the sub doesn't care by this point. Their families are dead. You turn the key. You turn the key because your family is dead. Yeah. So he's wrong. Mutually assured destruction was what carried us. The Russians knew goddamn well that if they pulled the trigger, we'd pull ours. So let's hear what dipshit has to say.
Okay, next clip.
Wait,
No,
before
the
we
real-
go, I need to ask a really stupid question because I'm not as versed as you guys are on this. The Amazon rainforest, I know that was a fuck you, but that also we're taking away any chance of, like, you know, basically having a natural air scrubber in the world?
Pretty much.
Fuck, dude,
Pretty
man,
much
I
eat a
guess.
dick.
Wow, man. Fuck, damn.
All right, next video.
No, the reality is you'll likely see the use of tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. We saw the mother of all bombs used in Afghanistan. It was massive. But why wouldn't Putin, if he's looking at losing ground in Ukraine, and Ukraine is what? It means the borderland to them. Why would he not just say flatten it? Low yield, tactical nuclear artillery or something like this. Strategic, whatever. We're talking maybe 100 kiloton bomb, smash Kiev, and shut down enemy forces.
Okay, number one. 100 kilotons. Okay. Yeah, 100 kilotons. Sounds impressive. It's 100,000. It's 100,000 tons of dynamite. The Russians have the father of all bombs, non-nuclear. They've tested it twice, worked both times. Bigger yield than the Moab. Why not just use that? The other thing is, the minute you pop a peewee, minute you pop a red pill, everybody freaks out. Now, France is on the edge of freaking out anyway. But you pop a therm, there's no going back. There's none. Number one, that's not a strategic weapon. A strategic weapon is an ICBM. He's talking about tactical weapons. Grand strategy versus field tactics. That's the difference. Crash course. Your strategy is where your divisions invade, your logistics, everything. Your tactics are what you do on the battlefield. Tactical is what he's talking about. The Russians never really had a successful test that they could prove they actually got it to work for a battlefield usage one. I think it was like 75 kilotons. The higher ones they had to basically drag in with a huge fucking semi truck. Everybody's like, oh, they could use the warhead from one of the Scuds. Eat a dick. Okay. And most of those were proven never to fucking work. Russians have had a problem with precision machinery. They probably still do. But the big thing is popping a 100 kiloton nuclear weapon in Kiev. Okay, number one, it's got to get in there. We'll say they use their hypersonic, which is basically a bottle rocket they point because it's got all the guidance system of a fucking brick because it's Russia. Sorry, country's a garbage fire, always been a garbage fire. Let's say it hits. Say it detonates 5,000 feet, rips a big hole. It's modern construction. If people have a time to prepare, I'd say, how many people live in Kiev?
We could check.
Check real quick for me. Kiev, if I'm right, is 6.5 kilometers wide. It's going to bite a chunk out of the middle. Flying glass is going to kill people.
3 million, roughly.
They'll lose 750,000 initially. Another 1 million dead over the course of 5 years. Right there, the gloves are off.
So they
Right
would lose
fucking
1/4 of their
there.
population, or 1/3 of their population.
In Kiev, yeah. That's, everything goes right. Knowing the potato snatchers, they'll lose half. Because they're Slavs, so they're going to lose half. Because they're going to go out there and dance in the fucking fallout. Once they do that, the gloves are off. Once they do that, the gloves are off. There's no holding back. They have said, we will use part of the big three: nuclear, biological, chemical. China used biological. So now we wait to see what happens with China is known to use biological. Ask some of the people around them. They pop a nuclear weapon, you can't hide it. It has a distinctive signature. It's unmistakable.
Well, seismographs around the world detect it, right?
Yes. It's that short, sharp punt. It's that short, sharp. It's like a regular earthquake is like slamming a sledgehammer down. A nuke is like driving an ice pick in. So number one, and number two, you can't hide that it's nuclear. You can't say, oh, it was actually a father of all bombs. No, it's everybody knows what it is. They're not going to drop. They are not going to fire 100 kiloton into Kiev because, number one, that's a capital city. And believe it or not, capital cities matter to the global community. If you're willing to pop a therm in somebody's capital city, you're willing to do it to everybody. Right there, Russia becomes, and you hear talk about rogue state now. Right there, the international community has no choice but to disavow what Russia did. Because now, if the tactical nuclear battlefield weapons are on the table, we've got a fuck ton of them. And ours are precise and ours are lethal. And, we didn't want to use the Moab for the longest time. I mean, we've used it once. I think maybe twice. I know we've used it once and it was a huge deal. We didn't use it to fucking level Fallujah. Once you take this step, there is no going back. And nobody will ever trust you again. And everybody looks at the rest of your nuclear arsenal and goes, so where exactly is that aim there, homeboy? Putin, everybody forgets, Putin was in the KGB. And if you look at Reagan's visits to Russia, and Eastern Europe in the 1980s, there are pictures of Putin standing there next to him. He also worked for Directorate 13. And that means that he knows exactly how the strategies for nuclear and atomic weapons were theorized and what they planned on doing. He's not stupid. He's not a madman. Yeah, he's a fucking potato grabber, but he's still an intelligent man. You survive in the KGB by being brutal, canny, and intelligent. He's all three. I mean, he really is. I don't. The guy's a fucking vodka swiller. He's a fucking troglodyte. What do I give a fuck? But he's not stupid, and he knows what will happen. Now the threat alone is a big deal. I mean, making that threat's like, whoa, dude, wait, it's just fucking Ukraine. Who gives a shit? But it's also him stating, if you move American troops or NATO troops into Kiev, into Ukraine, I'm going to use TAC nukes. But see, the irony of it is it was fine when him and China were supplying North Korea. It was fine when the USSR was supplying Vietnam. It was fine when, they supplied Grenada and Cuba and everything else. But now that it's happening to them, they fucking hate it. But he's still threatening the same way we said, if you move that shit into North Vietnam, we will nuke Hanoi.
Okay, should I play the next one?
Mm-hmm.
No one in NATO is going to retaliate to a battlefield nuke with a strike on a foreign capital because the retaliation would be on them. Of course, Vladimir Putin and other world leaders know if they use low-scale nuclear weapons on the battlefield, they will likely just see other low-scale nuclear weapons. But everyone's going to be basically say, we're not going to nuke Moscow, we're not going to nuke DC because that would be mutually assured destruction.
Okay. Can you leave my mic running and start that clip over?
I don't think I can, but I'll run it again, see what I can do, but I don't think I can. But want me to run it again?
Yes.
No one in NATO is going to retaliate to a battlefield nuke with a strike on a foreign capital because the retaliation would be on them.
Okay, Ralt.
Okay.
I think
that
I can
first
play
part.
it. Yeah.
That first part where he says no one in NATO is going to respond is wrong. It is dead wrong. There will be responses immediately. NATO has no choice but to respond. If they don't, they've lost all credibility, and everybody knows it. NATO's already on shaky ground. If they use, he's talking about hitting Kiev. Last time I checked, Kiev was the capital of Ukraine. And if they use, and he's saying, oh, they'll just see more tactical nuclear weapons. Okay. At one time, I fucked my girlfriend in a bunker with enough tactical nuclear weapons to erase the eastern seaboard, city by city. We have a fuck ton of them. We still do. We have hundreds of W series artillery shells. We could load those up. And these are 8-inch and 155. These aren't big, modified, specially designed ones. These are 8-inch and 155 shells that are anywhere from 15 kilotons all the way up to the big honking 650s. He wants to play, and he knows if he wants to play tactical nuclear weapons, we'll play. And we'll turn the entire fucking border into a sea of cobalt. No, they're not going to hit cap, but he's hitting the cap. Dipshit is ignoring the fact that they're hitting the capital of a country they're at war with. He's basically mashing the I win button and then setting it on fire. Is it possible? It's clown world. Anything is possible in clown world. With the fact that our military is fucked up beyond recognition. The fact that NATO is practicing with broomsticks and the UK has all of 16 tanks.
Christ.
They might roll the dice because all the NBC arsenal that the US owns is out of Europe and it's been reduced dramatically. And then some hippie made it his life's fucking work to try to demolish all the fucking chemical weapon shells, and nobody has the balls to make more. But if he's saying that NATO won't respond, that's not true. It better not be true, because if it is true, then what good is NATO? NATO has no use. That will be the biggest argument. If we don't respond, then what good are we?
That would be the end of NATO, wouldn't it?
It'd be the end of NATO.
And any member nation would suddenly start looking for a new ally, wouldn't they?
They said, no, everybody start developing no nuclear weapons. You'd have to. You would.
Okay.
Part of NATO was to stop nuclear proliferation, because NATO said, hey, France, Britain, and the US will take care of you. If he does that, NATO must respond. Now, can you rewind it back to the part right after he says that NATO won't respond, and then play that, and then stop?
No, I have to play the whole clip. I have to play
fuck.
the whole clip. But here's the thing. I think if you hit unmute on your mic, you can talk.
Okay. You can pause the video, right?
Unfortunately, no, because this is a StreamYard and the playback's very limited. That's why I cut them into clips. But
okay, go ahead, and I'll just unmute myself.
Okay.
No one in NATO is going to retaliate to a battlefield nuke with a strike on a foreign capital, because
they are.
The retaliation would be on them. Of
That's
course,
why it leads.
Vladimir Putin and other world leaders know if they use low-scale nuclear weapons on the battlefield, they will likely just see other low-scale nuclear weapons.
Low-scale by who?
Everyone's going
America?
to be basically, we're not going to nuke Moscow. We're not going to nuke DC, because that would be mutually assured destruction.
Okay, so nuclear. Okay, shit. You start hitting the farmland, and you start hitting everything. He's talking about responding. He doesn't get that if I pop a 250 kiloton battlefield nuclear weapon fired out of an M1 Abrams 120 millimeter main gun, use it to destroy some fortifications and some tanks, or maybe I'm feeling particularly salty that day. I use a W series shell with a enhanced booster, which can just be slapped on the end of it, double pack the prop charge, and fire the 8-inch gun, and it drops this fucking thing 5 miles away. And it's one of the big honking 850s. They're going to feel that. That shit's going to shake windows 75 miles away. People are going to know this shit happened. He's saying, oh, they're just going to see other tactical weapons. I worked, because of my job, I was Ordnance Corps, and I worked in a specific subsection of Ordnance Corps attached to Chem Corps and Atomic Command. And I was nobody. I was a regular troop. Just happened to work there. And the plan for the gap, if worse came to worse, was 3 Davy Crockett's to turn the fucking folded gap into an irradiated hellscape that soldiers couldn't march through. A tactical weapon leaves radiation behind. Sure, if it was World War III, back then, they trained us to charge through that shit. And they mentally prepared us to charge through that shit. I mean, fuck it, why not? I mean, our friends and family are dead. We might as well. You know, you don't want to start using tactical nuclear weapons. And anybody who knows about these things knows this because they leave semi-permanent scars. We're not talking like a meltdown where it takes 1,000 years for radiation to go down. We're talking, well, people live in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but still, you're talking about using a chunk of the sun to obliterate whole areas. You could end that. America could end that war with one fucking bunker out of fucking Redstone Arsenal. And the Russians know this. If they fire one, the gloves are off. And it will escalate. If Russia thinks it's losing, if Russia thinks they're in danger of Moscow being taken, if Russia thinks they're in danger of losing badly, we're not talking, the line stabilized to what it was, or he gets Donbass or whatever. We're talking a major city's going to get hit. He's going to do it because, number one, the Russian people expect him to. And there's the big one. The other thing is that's been part of the theory since the 50s, is that if Russia is intrinsically threatened, they will do it. The way he talks about it, we'll just see battlefield. Did you hear the flippant way he throws that out?
Yeah.
We'll just see battlefield. I was prepared to do it. Contrary to the movies and everything, me and everybody I worked with, we were ready to do it. We were waiting for it. It was not something that might happen. It was inevitable. It would happen, and it was going to happen any fucking day. Every day we woke up was a shock. Imagine living under that kind of stress for years. Wonder why you drink.
I remember those years.
And here I am going to work every day, and the place I worked was classified as a depot. So how you read, they were never taken out of the depot. Yeah, funny about that. The depot was in West Germany, right in the gap. So go figure that. It was classified as a depot, and it was a NATO site, which meant it was NBC capable. We were willing to do it, but we're talking end of the world shit. Okay, we're talking no holds barred. He fires one off, NATO must respond, whether it be standard airstrikes on the Kremlin, targeted drone strike on, they can't hit Putin because you're not supposed to do that. It was a big enough escalation when the Ukraine was flying in shitty drones and dropping fucking bombs on random people in the Moscow streets. That was bad enough. Yeah, you don't hear much about that. It's bad enough that the Ukrainians are using fucking high-tech drones to chase down soldiers that are fleeing, individual soldiers that are fleeing or trying to walk back to Russia that don't even have weapons and using them to blow them up.
I've seen the footage of that too.
That's disgusting. Okay, I got no problem with bayoneting a man. I've proven it. I got no problem killing a man. If to quote Jane, I got no problem killing a man in a fair fight. If I think he'll start a fair fight or over a woman, I got no problem with that. That's no big deal. But killing someone who's unarmed and fleeing is cowardice. It is, and especially when you're using a drone.
And they were doing that to tankers who were fleeing their vehicles.
Yep, and they didn't have weapons. There was a guy that was deliberately trying to surrender, and they kept dropping grenades on him.
Oh, I saw that video. That was fucking awful.
Yeah.
The Geneva Convention states that you are supposed to allow people to surrender. And I'm going to tell you why we need the Geneva Convention. Because there's those of you like, why should we follow rules of warfare? If you don't think we should, I want you to look up what happened in the Pacific in World War II. And I want you to look up what happened on the Eastern Front in World War I. And I want you to imagine that kind of warfare with modern weaponry. I want you to imagine somebody like 23, 24-year-old me, who just accepted the surrender of about 25 Iraqis and they were unarmed and hungry, just saying, nah, I don't feel like it, and telling my guys to open up with the 50s.
Well, wasn't that also a problem in World War II that you weren't supposed to hit anybody with the medic insignia, and the Nazis started sniping them
The
when they were
Nazis
on
and
the
the
battlefield?
Japanese would. The Nazis and the Japanese would.
See, that's where I think modern warfare changed. You're right, World War I, World War II, because people were acting like fucking savages and already a savage experience. I mean, it's
And war
disgusting they're going to kill medics.
is bad enough. We don't need it unrestrained. Okay, unrestrained is, and the same people that say, oh, ha, it's funny, look at him drop this grenade on this guy trying to surrender, are the ones that complain when during a rocket bombardment an apartment building's hit, which of course turned out to be the Ukrainian anti-air defense, but we can ignore that. But they'll complain about that. They'll complain that, water and electricity and sewage are targeted. Well, that's part of the infrastructure. It's used to support the military. Goodbye. And part of warfare is breaking the back of the civilians. You're not supposed to target the civilians, but you can target electrical generation, you can target sewage, you can target farmland, but you can't target churches, hospitals.
Okay, let me just ask real quickly here. After our experience, I think, in Vietnam, didn't we officially change our strategy? Do not aim for, do not hit civilians. For that matter, do not hit anything regarding civilians unless it's to make war. Basically, don't.
That's pretty much our unofficial motto.
Yeah, it was don't make war against the civilians. Make it impossible for them to make war.
Yes, that's actually been the strategy, and it really hasn't been working. It really doesn't work. It doesn't work. America avoids civilian casualties as much as possible. You hear somebody, 1.5 million Iraqis and Afghanis dead in 20 years.
Guys, I'll be right back. Something weird is happening.
Okay. But when you're dealing with a conflict like Ukraine, where there's large urban centers, you're gonna get civilian casualties. Now, I'm not saying that I say burn all the civilians. I mean, let's not do Dresden again, for fuck's sake.
Okay, sorry about that. Our TV, our Alexa, decided to just start playing The Expanse out of the blue, and it scared the absolute shit out of me because there were explosions going on in the next room. And we're talking about nukes.
Anyway, go on with the next part of dipshit.
And I'm not even convinced mutually assured destruction is a guarantee. In the event that, say, NATO does press against the borders of Russia, I'm not even entirely convinced that Russia is going to decide to launch a bunch of nukes. So right now, understand this. Every day when you're reading the news, we will be talking about the fears and the escalation of what's going on in Ukraine and Israel and the Red Sea, Iran, China, Venezuela. And it will be a slow march towards total annihilation.
Is he done talking? I have to sit here and chain smoke. Okay. That was basically a non-sentence. He's a millennial. He's got the brain capacity of a chimp with a head wound. Mutually assured destruction worked. Mutually assured destruction fucking worked. If you don't think it works, you're alive, dumbass.
Well, like how many stories there were of guys who did not want to push that button, even though, like, they were getting all these orders to do so and other things like that, because they didn't want to be that guy.
Well, that's the Air Force. We had a mistake happen. The U.S. military no longer uses actual nation names in their practice exercises, because in 1989 they sent it forward and the transatlantic line cut off the first 6 lines, which said practice, which meant they rolled us ready to fucking invade, and we damn near did. We were cracking open the hot bunkers, but mutually assured destruction worked. And it worked really well because we're still here. And yeah, there was, the higher ups were like, we need to verify this shit. But if it ever got down to somebody like me, or the tankers I knew, or the guys from the field artillery units I knew, or the Hawk missile guys I knew, there would have been no question. There would have been no soul searching. There would have been no, I don't want to do this. There would have been fire for effect. That would have been it. And Russia knew it. See, they weren't afraid of, they weren't afraid of the middle command going rogue or the upper command going rogue. They were more worried about one of us going, you know what? My wife left me. My dog died. My mom slept with a clown. Why don't we just have a good day? Because the rank and file down in the actual trigger pullers, the infantry guys that were slated to fire the Davy Crockett's, the SF guys that were supposed to take in the medium atomic demolition mines to the edges of the cities, they were all willing to do it, perfectly willing to pull that trigger. And Russia knew it. And we believe that their side felt the same. Believe me, they had full psychological workups on fucking basic privates who had only been in for 6 months, who had their hands on nuclear weaponry. They knew. I mean, the military chose you and trained you, and you failed if they thought you couldn't pull the trigger. So mutually assured destruction worked because it wasn't a game. It was real, and we were willing to do it. Gen X is a special kind of fucked up. Okay, we're a special kind of fucked up.
Yeah,
it's true.
Indeed.
I read a psychological report that in the 60s and the 70s they had a problem manning the silos in the Midwest, and they had a problem with positions like mine because a lot of these guys didn't want to do it. And Gen X came rolling in about 84, 85, and the Army was like, oh my God, our problem is not getting them to do it. Our problem is keeping them from doing it. Because we grew up with it, and a lot of us were like, okay, let's get this dance started. I want to play Mad Max.
We were told every fucking day that might be the day we're going to get nuked. I remember every fucking day it was everywhere. You're going to get nuked.
I remember telling a friend of mine in a 3rd Magazine platoon that when it went down, he better get them asses chaps because I loved his blonde hair. Because I was like, you're gonna ride bitch on my motorcycle. And he was like, dude, that's creepy. I'm like, you're riding bitch, buddy. My girlfriend was like, what about me? I was like, there's that cute redhead in Motorpool. You like her? She's like, yeah, I'll make her wear assless chaps. She can ride on the back of my motorcycle. I mean, that was the actual attitude. And yes, it was mutually assured destruction was a real thing. Do you know why Tim Pool and a lot of people and a lot of millennials think that mutually assured destruction was a hoax?
Why?
They cannot picture themselves pulling that trigger. And because they can't believe that anybody would be willing to. And I am here to tell you, I'd have been perfectly willing to do it. I'd have been fine with it. It wouldn't have, I would, for the remaining nights I had, I would have slept great. Wouldn't have bothered me one fucking bit. You want to know why? Because when I pull that trigger, the ICBM's already going to kill my family. So nobody walks away alive.
Yeah.
So he says that mutually assured destruction wasn't really a thing. It was, because you had assholes like me. If the president was knocked out, if Air Force One was knocked out, if NORAD was knocked out, if the chain of command evolved far enough, the chief foreign officer in charge of me was in charge of nuclear deployment for the entire Western fucking front, and for the entire Eastern front of Western Europe. It came all the way down to I could authorize them. That's how the chain worked. And I would have done it. I would have done it without losing a bit of sleep. Because they pulled the trigger. So let's finish this. Now, you can always take one with you. There is room in this grave for you. I mean, I know this sounds grim, but that was my life.
I think people need to hear this because it's just not real to them.
My gas mask was not allowed to be further than 10 feet from me at any time. It hung on the end of my bed. My radiation gear was in my top wall locker. I carried a pen on me at all times that would, the pen in the notebook and the piece of equipment, I can't remember the name of it, would let me compute the range, distance, and intensity of a nuclear detonation within 90 seconds. I carried a map in my duty uniform with possible targets so I could estimate how many hits there were, where they came from. I literally looked at it as, if I have to pull the trigger, everybody in the U.S. I know is dead. There's 220 million people dead, and I'm going to avenge every one of them. And the last thing those Russian sons of bitches are going to see is the flash before their eyeballs pop. That's how I looked at it. And everybody I knew was the same way. Yeah, we drank, we fought, we watched fucking Sesame Street in the morning. We laughed, we did fucked up things. But they let us get away with it because they knew we'd pull the trigger. And not everybody can. The military carefully weeded us out. And, I've heard people tell me, oh, they don't give you psychological exams every 180 days. The fuck they don't. The other thing is radiation can affect your brain. So they're also looking for radiation-induced psychosis, long-term radiation exposure psychosis. It makes you crazy. We were willing to pull the trigger. We didn't care. Well, we cared, and that's why we were willing to pull the trigger. And for somebody like Tim Pool to say, oh, I doubt it was a thing. Well, I'm sorry that he can't imagine being dedicated. I'm sorry he can't imagine being part of something bigger than himself. Why? Because he's a fucking YouTube star who wears a beanie to hide his bald spot.
The thing that gets me is that he kind of feels that he has cred because, one, he apparently grew up in Chicago, and two, was a war tourist.
A what?
A war tourist?
He didn't even grow up in the rough. He grew up in the south side of Chicago.
But,
so I should ask it. So I could ask him how the gangster disciples' dicks taste.
But no, he was he did the tourism where you go to war-torn nations.
Oh, here's my creds. I caused that shit. Okay, I called in fucking airstrikes. There's my war tourism.
This is why I wanted you to actually talk about this, because I don't know, when he's shooting his mouth off about this stuff, it really gets on my nerves, and I can't answer it like you can.
Notice he didn't talk to anybody. Nobody. Okay, I don't like Tom Nichols because he teaches at the Navy Academy, and he's a dick sucking scumbag, and he's never actually been involved with the nuclear program or the atomic command. He's never actually been involved in. He talks all kinds of shit on fucking Twitter, and he's been on the fucking TV, and God, I want to punch him in his fucking mouth. I want to because I'm old. I want to hire somebody to punch him in the mouth. I want to get some big motor pool gorilla to fucking nail him in the fucking mouth. Because he talks all this fucking shit. I teach at the Navy Academy. Big fucking deal. I'm not asking you what the fucking cadets' dicks taste like. But he didn't reach out to anybody. I'll bet he has no idea that the Davy Crockett was a real fucking thing. Okay? That the atomic demolition mines were real fucking things. That tank and artillery fired nuclear weapons were real fucking things. And I love it. I've heard people. Now, I've looked it up on Wikipedia. There were no tank fired rounds. Well, that's real fucking interesting considering I had nearly 800 of them. 800, 120 millimeter, adjustable detonation. All I needed was a screwdriver. Well, a specialized screwdriver, but that's beside the point. But, I could adjust it. The tankers could adjust it. And it was designed to stop the Russian armor waves because they outnumbered us 10-1. So, yeah, we were willing to do it. Everybody was. Because Gen X is special kind of fucked up. Yeah, keep playing.
Yeah. No, we are a very special kind of fucked up. And I've had, I remember the listeners saying, Gen X sounds kind of depressing. Yeah, okay, sure. That's
fair.
It
was a blast. It was a blast. I mean, you go out, you get ripped, you fuck the short blonde chick who's, most of the times a lesbian beside the dumpster because she punched you in the mouth. Then you get drunk and vomit in the fucking cop car and then kiss on her all the way to the fucking cell. You don't care that she threw up on your shoe?
I've been barfed on. Hey, yeah, it's no big deal.
I've been barfed on. I'm going to stop. That ain't stopping me. Bend over.
Oh, God.
Ever had your cock barfed on?
No, I haven't had that happen.
I did.
I've had her pull away and throw up next to me and then go back to it because she was shit-faced.
So you want to hear the last clip? This is the
sure.
last one.
All
right.
Why not?
Wow, that's it?
Why not?
Well, I guess that's all that loaded. Never mind. Well, never mind. I guess that last clip just didn't make it through. Never mind.
Tim Pool
saying it was, why not? Why not drop a few nukes? It's no big deal.
You know,
Okay.
I bet Tim would care if you threatened his chickens.
I'll bet Tim would care if he knew that he needs to get in a basement for a minimum of a week. Once that wall of fucking fallout hits him.
Doesn't his basement his studio?
Something like that. I don't know.
How long can he live down there? See, I can live. My family can live in our basements for up to 90 days.
Yeah, apparently he got paranoid, and he was going to get a van, and he said he was going to get a van and just be mobile. But then he struck it rich, and he decided to make himself a compound in West Virginia.
Oh,
and
so
he doesn't leave.
So he's a meal on wheels for the cannibals that live out there. Cool. No, I'm just joking. No, see, what it is people like Tim Pool can't Okay, millennials don't understand nationalism. They act like it's a bad thing. Nationalism is pride in your country, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your country should be your country should be capable of great things. You should believe that your country is capable of great things. Focusing on only the bad thing your nation does and say nations only do bad things while you're enjoying clean water, stable electricity, medical care. I mean, sure, in America, they'll charge you $30,000 for those stitches, but you got them, didn't you? Canada, can I recommend death? Europe, we can see you in 6 weeks. He can't imagine it, so it must not be real. He doesn't get it that Russian nationalists are perfectly willing to take apart other countries in order to further the goals of Russia. They also can't understand wanting to be something bigger than yourself or being part of something bigger than yourself. I mean, it's going to sound weird, but I'm pretty proud of myself that they had a major file on me. I've stated before I was in Veal Flicking, and when they rolled up Jerry's Keller bar after the wall fell down and discovered it was a KGB front, my buddy in 108th MI in 108th MI battalion showed me my file that they had, and it was two and a half folders thick. And it mentioned,
wow.
it had all kinds of shit in it, but it mentioned that I was borderline unstable and perfectly willing to blow everything up, which also meant my name was on a hit list.
Oh shit!
The Russians' plan prior to any major thing that they were going to plan to do was to eliminate NCOs instead of officers. They weren't going to hit the officers; they were going to hit the NCOs. So they're going to hit people like me because I'm the one that had the keys. I'm the one that knew how everything worked. They hit me, and so finding out your name was on a hit list for several years. It was pretty funny. I thought it was funnier than shit. I mean, it was hilarious to me at the time because they got so much
easier
wrong.
for you to press the button.
Yeah, I would have made it easier. I don't care. Click, boom, bye. They're like, oh, you would have taken it too. Well, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have been so hopped up on anti-rads and painkillers, or I would have died in the initial blast. Those were my choices. Nothing like, being hopped up on anti-rads and morphine and high as fucking listening to heavy metal while you're, blowing up other people's fucking shit. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. And a lot of these pundits don't understand it, and they don't understand the mindset of using one of those weapons. Putin's not going to wake up one morning and just decide to do it. Now, the biggest threat to Putin using it is right now American politics and Europe's commitment to NATO. Since the 1970s, okay, I'm going to give it to some of the countries. The Netherlands, the Netherlands dug in like fucking ticks. They were ready to fight the last snowflake. Norway, the Norwegians, same thing. Mm-hmm. Finland, Finland would have been a nightmare. Poland, even though they're in Russian territory, even though they're a Warsaw Pact nation, they intended on fighting the Russians.
Yeah,
actually, they intended on fighting everybody. They were just gonna start swinging. France. I will give it to France during the Cold War. France had some of the best special forces out there. Unfortunately, it was the Foreign Legion and their standard military troops that were complete fucking scumbags. That because nobody rapes a village girl like a Frenchman. We always knew, we always checked if we were being deployed to Africa or someplace like that for like 30 to 60 days. And that wasn't even listed as a deployment. That was listed as TDY. TDY to be determined. You knew you were going to Africa. Because when he came back, it was TDY to be determined, and you got your TDY pay, and there were your records. It's a special kind of fucked up. But I would always tell everybody, because an officer taught me this, always look to see who the UN or NATO had deployed there first, and if it was French, the locals were going to be mad because the French had been raping the village girls. Let's see, Britain has almost no tanks. They got rid of most of their nuclear arsenal. I think they've got a few left that the public doesn't know about. Germany wasn't allowed to have them. France has theirs. But Canada used to have the best bioweapons program in the Western world. It was absolutely phenomenal. But they got rid of it. He doesn't understand that this shit is real. And for him to decide to do it, he's going to look at, number one, he's going to look at the American leadership. Well, our leadership is geriatric and inept from top to bottom. Our generals are from nepotism. The rot has set in so fucking bad. If you had come to me in the 1980s and told me that the U.S. military would look like this, I would have fucking laughed at you. I would have never been able to imagine it. NATO's military is absolutely dick. Now, I think I mentioned this on another fucking stream. But here's how the NATO nations used to make their obligation. I had a bunker. I had over 100 bunkers, and 10 of them were NATO bunkers. And when the bunkers were finished and we loaded them up, we loaded them with stuff that was made in America, and it was shipped to America. I was shipped from America, and it was picked up by American troops and brought to my site. It was put on a train. We guarded the train. Nothing like sitting in a fucking train car with a rifle, fucking smelling train and stupidity for fucking 11 hours. But it was moved to the site. We put it in the bunker by American soldiers. Now, along comes the NATO guys. And we'll say, just for example, some rockets, say 100, we'll say 200 rockets. Each of them cost $20,000 to make. So right there, what's 20 times 200,000? I don't know, something. It's like 440 million. Okay, so Britain comes along and says, okay, we want these to be in our bunker, and we put them in the bunker. And France comes along and goes, oh, good, those are in there. And then I don't know, somebody else comes along and says, Italy comes along and says, oh, we'll take those. And 4 different nations are claiming this ammo. And the U.S. military says, okay, we give it over to our NATO forces, but it stays on our inventory. So you have one set of 200 rockets claimed by 4 other nations besides America, and each of them are claiming that on their NATO, on what they give into NATO. That's how that worked. That's why I get so mad when I look at it and I see how little they put forward, when I know their contributions a lot of times are, 4 of them claiming the same rocket. The other thing they do is they would claim the artillery shell, the prop charge, and the fuse as separate, which technically it is.
The thing that pissed me off the most about Europe is they were always constantly just talking massive shit about how horrible we were and how militaristic we were, until it came to actually fighting, and then they really, really wanted us to do it for them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing to never forget. Everything we're dealing with for colonialism and everything else was not America. It was Europe. France is still getting paid billions of dollars a year by African nations because they were former colonies. Still. They talk all this smack about how imperialistic we are. Motherfuckers, you owned the world before we were even a nation. And, during the Cold War, they actually, they had tanks. I used to love to watch the Leopards and the Challengers because they'd break down.
Oh, shit.
I can remember them towing the Challengers up to the range.
So they weren't nearly as good as they claimed?
Oh, fuck no. Okay, you look at a tank. Oh, it's faster than the M1, but it's more lightly armored. Okay. Its gun has a better range than the M1 when it shoots standing still. Okay. It's got more weapons than the M1. Okay. But you notice not one of them beats a 50-year-old tank. And the M1 is. The M1's 50 years old. It's just been upgraded a lot. It's reached the point they can't upgrade it anymore, so they're making the Abrams X. But it's a 50-year-old tank design, and none of these assholes have managed to make a tank that in total beats it. You know, everybody was talking about the Russian one. Ooh, the Russian one, the Russian tank. Yeah, that fucker lasted, I think it lasted 38 minutes. It got killed by a fucking Bradley. The
Wow.
Bradley is 40 years old. All America shit is 30, 40 years old. Because Clinton canceled Clinton, Bush, and Obama canceled all the fucking projects that was supposed to replace all that shit by now. Now he's talking about stuff that he doesn't understand in the slightest. He has no comprehension of any of this. Okay, let's use a recent example. Let's take what happened in New Orleans during that fucking hurricane. Okay, now it took what 4 or 5 days to happen.
Yeah.
Imagine that happening in less than 4.5 seconds. Only everything's irradiated. That's one bomb. That's one. New Orleans was the equivalent of a 4.5 megaton blast. That's it. He's downplaying weapons. The 20 kiloton little boy. I think it was 20 kilotons. I know it's between like 15 and something. I can't remember anymore. I used to have all this shit memorized because they made me fucking memorize it. But Japan was mostly bamboo, rice paper, and wishes. But it still fucked that city up. You know, what a lot of people don't realize is the horror of Nagasaki or Hiroshima, I don't remember which one it was anymore, wasn't the initial blast. Radiation poisoning makes you thirsty. And no matter how much you drink, you can't quench the thirst. And I was reading the survivors' autobiographies, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was from a priest. He was in the church. And the church collapsed, but he didn't get pinned, and he came out. And soldiers in the bunker across the street from him were coming out bleeding from the ears. And this was in the city. But he was talking about 2 days later, he was moving around all the people that had staggered and crawled to the river and were drinking from the river until they literally were vomiting back up blood and water, because the thirst couldn't be quenched, and they laid by the river and writhed and died as their cellular walls broke down and they turned into liquid shit. He was talking about thousands of people. That's the kind of shit that he's just hand waving away with strategic nuclear. Shut the fuck up, Tim. Okay, go get some fucking hair plugs and take that stupid hat off. You look retarded. Okay. Fuck, he looks like the top of one of those fucking ink pens, you pop it off and it's got a fucking clown face. I mean, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He didn't do any research. He didn't talk to any experts. I'm not an expert because my information is 40 years out of date. Okay. And people like to say, oh, well, it hasn't changed. Yes, it has. Okay. The big problem with the Minutemen and the missiles is, number one, they can't repair them. And number two, they can't be upgraded any further. And we canceled making the new designs under Clinton, because God forbid, we say current, but he didn't do any research, and he's like, I can't see MAD being a thing. Well, I can't see being a grown man and wearing a beanie. Okay, why don't you just get yourself a fucking propeller on top, you fucking douche?
Yeah, and the thing is remember when everyone started screaming and yelling when Trump said, I want to put money towards updating the nuclear stockpile?
Yeah.
Because it's horribly out of date and it's dangerous.
Yeah, I clap like a retarded seal. I mean, for one thing, the pressure tests on the fuel tanks, are putting stress on them. They've got to replace them. I mean, too many people think it's like a video game. Once you make it, can just sit there. Where's your cigarette? You got 100?
Well, I have one other question, and then I don't know.
Then you can see what some of the chat asks.
Oh, the peanut gallery's been great. Now, the one thing I've always kind of been curious about was the risk of a possible, well, instead of a launched nuclear strike, what if the nuclear strike just happens to be a suitcase sitting in a hotel somewhere?
Okay.
And then you blame terrorists.
There's several theories regarding that. Okay, I don't know how true it is, but I do know we had to move. We always had to move we could only move the weapon, the nukes, or bring them out of the bunkers during certain times. We had to make sure there wasn't Russian satellites overhead. Supposedly, they can be detected from space. I do know, but see, that's weird because at the same time, it's weird because I could stand, I'd stand right next to them and check the shielding and just have background. Number one, they're heavy. I mean, a W series shell is heavy as hell.
Okay.
They're not going to get small enough to put in a suitcase because you'd be better off with C4 at that low of a net explosive weight. You'd be better off.
Okay,
with
so
Semtex.
so the whole panic during 9/11 about suitcase nukes was bull.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God.
Yeah. Okay. Because remember, you're depending on a sphere of enriched uranium. Okay, and once you squeeze it down to a certain amount, I mean, the U.S. squeezed it all the way down to 0.8 kilotons, and that was a shoulder-fired missile. It wasn't the Davy Crockett; it was a different project. They squeezed it down to 0.8 kilotons, which is, and then they were like, if we go any lower explosive weight, we might as well just use plastic explosive because to get a suitcase nuke, it would not be that. It wouldn't be the less plutonium you have, the lower your explosive weight is. And then depending on whether you use the gun, whether or not it's jacketed, weight matters. I mean, sure, the guy's going to be dragging around a 40-pound suitcase. I'm sure that's going to be inconspicuous. Oh, and that also means, to put it in something that small, you have no shielding. So, and places like
Okay.
DC have radiation detectors all over the place. Or at least they used to. They probably don't anymore. They probably replaced it with microaggression detectors.
Okay, let's see if I know this or if I'm talking out of my ass. I had heard the other problem with micronizing or shrinking down nukes was because of the necessary atomic weight. After a certain size, the half-life would actually become an issue, and the weapon would only be good for like a few years. Okay, so that's true.
Try hours or days.
Oh, really?
They shrunk it down to enough where, it got ridiculous. By the 70s, it got so ridiculous that your enriched material, the half-life was so fucking, it's short anyway. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the cores are so big is so they can sit there for 20, 30 years. And God, I hated when we had to switch the cores because that meant taking it apart. That's how I got flashed. But you got to take it out and everything. But the core isn't that big. The majority of what you see when they show a core in the movies, that's shielding. And without that shielding, that core will melt your fucking balls. And everybody wants that. So yeah, they hit a point where, they manufacture the core and it's good for like 6 hours. Or it's still, it can still explode for, a month. What good is that?
So,
nobody looks at it long term. They don't manufacture it. It's a super secret spy agency. Move it to Maxwell Smart, who shoves it in a dog's ass 8 hours later, and it blows up. That's not how this works. This shit takes months, and you have to be able to have it last for years, which means your core has to be big enough because atomic decay is a thing. We'll try explaining that.
So hiding a nuke in a city and just keeping it there in case you want to strike really isn't practical.
You move it in a Connex surrounded by file cabinets to the Russian embassy. That's how they did. That's how they did it. That's how they did it. So that's how the Russians did it in the 70s, and they got caught. But yeah,
actually trying to sneak a nuke into the embassy.
No, they got caught with it in the embassy.
Oh shit! So there was actually some basis behind the premise in Deathlands.
Yes,
where there was a nuke hidden in the Russian embassy.
Yeah,
Oh fuck!
Well, you got to
I didn't
remember
know
the American embassy in Moscow was so wired up for sound that the EM was completely hashed up to a mile and a half away. It literally made people sick and dizzy, and gave them headaches because it was so wired up. And they checked everything going into that embassy to make sure we didn't do what they did. It's always been a risk, because they have to have diplomatic immunity to move stuff through without the host nation snatching it. But you're running the risk of someone bringing something in. But once you do that, I mean, despite what people think, America's pretty forgiving. In the 70s, it was largely covered up. I don't know if it's even public knowledge, but they got caught with it, and we just said, put that shit back on a truck and get the fuck out of our country, you vodka swilling retards. And they went, sorry, and they put it in the truck and drove it away.
Well, we were the nation that decided to rebuild our enemies' cities after we bombed them. So
it was decided it wasn't really worth making that big of a fuss over, because I think that was Khrushchev. I think it was the guy before Andropov.
Khrushchev?
Yeah, he was the one that did that.
Oh, gee.
He was a nut. He was a fucking crazy person. Now, you got to remember, we had theorized having a jet that used a nuclear reactor to just spew radiation out behind it while it dropped atomic bombs.
I've seen that design.
I do believe that was Project Orion. That was fucking amazing.
Yeah, amazing, but nuts.
I think, did they actually build a couple? I keep thinking they built a couple.
They didn't test it, or I don't know. It was just one of those doomsday weapons that was insane.
No. And remember everybody freaking out over the nuclear torpedoes?
Yeah.
The U.S. Navy has had them since the 1960s. Okay, Russia bragging they have them now. It's like, oh, wow. Should I run down and buy the new Beatles record? You fucking slobbering retard. They claim to have it forever. They also claim to have seeded the fault lines in the Pacific Ocean with I think 25 megaton weapons, so that if anything happens, they detonate them and make the ring of fire go up. That was one of their claims.
They were very good at making bizarre claims.
Yes, they were. They had the greatest claims. We stitched a monkey's head to this pig and it lived for 12 days. Why? Science! That's not how science works, dude.
We're breeding our soldiers with apes to make them super strong.
Wait, what?
That was a rumor, propaganda.
Yeah.
Aren't they also trying to do the Weapon X project?
They tried that. That is sick. They did a thing where they did replace a guy's skeleton with steel.
Dude,
he lived right until he ran out of blood. He lived right until he ran out of blood.
Exactly. That is exactly what happened.
Oh, and okay. And implants like that fucked your body up, man. I mean, I've got implants for my shoulders, and some, for the first couple of weeks, man, they just fucked with my immune system. Because if you get the wrong amount of nickel in it, or the titanium balance isn't right, it'll fuck you up. The human body does not like to be fucked with. But go with some of the questions in the channel if anybody's got any.
Oh, okay.
I mean, none of this is national security. I'm not telling you how to make one. It's not that hard.
Mega Buster Shepard said he liked the nuclear Zeppelin.
Yes.
Destroyer. Apparently, this dude's name is impossible to pronounce. Destroy 845 says Project Pluto was the ramjet.
Okay, Project Pluto.
He also asked about the Marauder project.
It rings about 3 different bells, dude. Yeah. Marauder was the code name for the replacement for the Bradley in the 1990s canceled project. The Marauder concept was would nuke fault lines set it off? Theoretically, no. Okay, an earthquake takes place miles below the surface. A surface detonation, probably not. But we never tested it. It's everybody makes fun of Trump for saying can we nuke the backside of the hurricane and make it disperse? But that was actually Department of Energy theory.
Yeah, it was.
He was actually quoting Department of Energy theory. I mean, it wasn't that stupid.
That was
the Star
Edward
Wars
Teller's plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Star Wars project under Reagan was genius. Number one, they dumped shit tons of money. Actually, your computer, part of the reason why your computer is as small as it is because of the billions of dollars dumped into the Star Wars project. Because the Star Wars project needed three things: fast computers, precision targeting, because you're targeting at the range of thousands of miles, hundreds, thousands of miles, and a system that could predict either a railgun, an explosion forged X-ray laser, or a reusable laser that could knock the missile out. That led to advances in propulsion technology, targeting technology, computing technology. But ultimately, the biggest thing it did was it drove the Soviet Union into bankruptcy. I mean, we were putting satellites up at the rate of like 3 or 4 a day, and they didn't know what was. And some of them were listed as part of the Star Wars project, and what they were actually doing was mapping the globe and tracking the thermal jet streams.
Cool.
Yeah, it was like hitting a bullet with a bullet. But the thing is now, here's the thing. Look at modern technology. We're at the point where hitting a bullet with a bullet is not that unfeasible. We're getting to the point where it's possible, because you're dealing with a bullet that takes 30 minutes to. And people forget how far the distances are. I mean, yeah, they're low orbit weapons, suborbitals, but they're still they may be traveling at hundreds of miles an hour, but you could still hit them. The Patriot missile system, which knocked down Scuds, turned out to have a problem because Intel fucked up their fucking chip so that it had a floating point error, and you had to reset the whole system every 24 hours, and nobody knew that at the time. The Patriot missile system was said to be an impossibility, and it worked, and it's a direct offshoot of the Star Wars project. The Star Wars project was genius because our technology, this is going to sound funny, and it might insult those of us who aren't American listeners, but American technology might as well be fucking magic. American tech might as well be fucking magic to the majority of people. What we could do, I mean, fuck, we should have no energy problems. We should have no green energy problems. We were supposed to replace every power plant in America with 1,200 nuclear reactors in the 1980s. The plasma rifle working model had 600 meter range. DoD shut down, took everything. No, that would have been after me. Yeah, the Aegis system is fucking amazing. It was thought to be completely unable to do it. The Phalanx system, able to shoot down ship killer missiles that are moving at 300-400 miles an hour.
My grandfather on my father's side of the family worked for General Dynamics, and as well as working on the Standard Missile and the F-16, he did do some contributions to the Phalanx, and that he said he got to see a demonstration of it done, and that the naval commanders were kind of a mix of pleased and incredibly upset that their missiles could be outdated.
Yes. Well, it's like, what's happened with, the UK covered their face with eggs because they've had 2 attempts to launch a sub-launched missile. The first one went off target and had to be destroyed. The second one flew about 150 meters from the sub and landed in water. That means the pressure launching system worked, but the missile never took off. The missile never ignited. That's where everybody's arsenals is sitting, including Russia's.
Russia doesn't even have more than one aircraft carrier.
I think that one's powered by wishes and potatoes. Last time they launched that aircraft carrier, it caught on fire.
I know India bought the other one and it didn't work very well.
No. China had theirs that they launched. They had that third one that they don't talk about that they launched, and it sunk. It barely got out of the harbor before it sunk. It just majestically slid beneath the waves. There was all kinds of projects in the 80s, the Scorpion body armor system, which, God damn it, I still am pissed that they didn't go with that. Because, it was too expensive and we don't need to spend $125,000 per individual soldier.
I'd like to make a comment about the price of military budget and the expensive weaponry, because this one really gets on my nerves every time. I lived in a household that was always bitching about the military budget until I kind of looked into this. One, fire a bunch of colonels and it would go down. Second, that money needs to be going to actual soldiers and development. But when you hear about the price of a fighter jet like the Raptor, when you hear about the price of a battleship, and the Democrats love harping on how expensive they are, realize that this is not like buying a home stereo or something. This is not like buying a car even. Keep in mind that the F-16s that we fielded in the 70s, late 70s, we're still using that jet.
Mm-hmm.
The battleships have a lifespan of anywhere between 50 to 100 years. I mean, it's not like, you buy it once and we have it for fucking ever, as long as you maintain it.
I also want to bring something I brought up in the show before. The U.S. press made a big thing over $125 hammers. And to this day, they always talk about $125 hammers. Anytime you hear somebody saying that, I want you to smack them in the mouth for me. The $125 hammer was non-magnetic, sparkless beryllium bronze. And I worked with weaponry that generated magnetic fields, and I worked with weaponry that was sensitive to magnetic fields. And we're talking so little that I could not wear my belt. Because the thin little metal belt buckle that the military belt had could, in theory, cause an arc. I actually got yelled at because they saw that the enamel had worn off my belt buckle and I had a streak of bronze. And in theory, they could have caused an electrical arc. And static electricity, you had to wear a static strap, because the static electricity on your fingers could cause it to detonate. Now, this hammer was beryllium bronze, non-magnetic, and plastic coated. I think it had Kevlar weave. No, Kevlar weave was the second version. Of those hammers anymore. They made it so that, we're not going to buy $125 hammers anymore. They replaced them with the hammers you get at Target. Steel, heavy, and cause sparks. Those hammers, that decision and that laughter literally killed a friend of mine, because the spark hit the dust from prop charges and caused those to catch on fire, which caused the prop charge to catch on fire, which caused it to explode. Him and 3 other people were dead because of a $125 hammer.
That's
4 people's lives were worth $125. I kept my hammer. Up until I left the Army. And when I left the Army, I gave it to someone in my job and said, "Here, you can have my hammer." And he was like, "Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to live with it. I thought you were going to leave with it." Those $125 hammers were there deliberately. That's like they talk about, $5,000 for a toilet. You know what that fucking toilet does? It's a marvel of engineering. It's a marvel of it. And but no, they want to sit there and go, $125 hammer, he. Fuck you, you killed my friends.
It's a kind of a literal example of, what is it, the horseshoe nail, for lack of?
Yep.
Jeez.
Lack of a nail. And, people are like, it's a $125 hammer. It doesn't need to be that expensive. These were custom made. They had to be custom made. Because, and and unfortunately, we're going to be buying our ammunition from Australia soon, because, opening an ammunition plant in America can't be done because of, environmental impact studies. And, it's going to cost you $4 million to build the factory. You're going to be spending $25 million before you ever break ground. So, it's complicated. And for somebody like Tim Pool to sit there, and talk about, tactical battlefield weaponry with his head shoved firmly in his ass. And he's got a huge audience, and they're all going to believe him. They're all going to listen to him. If I wanted to know anything about him, I'd ask what beanies work best to cover a bald spot. I'd ask him which is easier to fuck, bannies or the other chickens. He's talking about shit that he doesn't know. So, and the whole thing irritated me.
Again, that's sorry to irritate you, but that's why I wanted you to hear it. Is I wanted you to debunk and give us the straight story on it, because that's one of the things he loves shooting his mouth off about is nukes. Like he's some sort of fucking expert.
He doesn't know anything about them, because otherwise he would have called them tactical nuclear weapons, not strategic. If you're making a mistake that bad, I make mistakes now and then. Okay, I probably drink my body weight in alcohol every week. I deliberately spent time killing brain cells, deliberately. You go back to making sure I can get it to the front door, put my shoes on right. I'll go back to killing you with alcohol. That was the deal. And to hear him saying this shit is annoying, because people are going to believe him. And, that's like fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, there's no radiation. You fucking dildo. It's a fusion reaction. It creates radiation no matter what you do, and radiation is part of the weapon. It literally is. It's literally part of the weapon. I mean, Tim Pool needs smacked in the mouth. Okay, he's done no research. None. Absolutely none. If he would have done any research, he would have known about the Davy Crockett. He would have known about he would have known about Project Brightlands. He would have known about Project Yellow Book. Just the fucking basics. I mean, he could have gone on to Federation of American Scientists, which I disagree with him on a lot, but because they're a little bit of a everybody panic right now, but they've got the best data. There are some sites out there that'll let you see how big the blast of a nuclear weapon is. Some of those sites are wrong, because like I said, they do the doubling. If a 1 megaton does a 0.8 kilometer wide crater, then of course a 2 megaton is going to do a 1.6, and that's not how it works. It's not how math works. I mean, I can't remember the actual formula's name. When I was in on this shit, when I was doing this stuff, I could actually compute this shit in my head and knew the theories. But I do know that the radius of the blast does not increase in proportion to the net explosive weight increase. I can't remember how it works, but pretty soon you end up with jack and shit. Let's see, how big was the crater for that Tsar bomb? Tsar Bomba crater. Crater size, 25 miles broad. Oh, that's a cloud. Okay, the cloud for the Tsar Bomba was 25 miles wide and 60 miles high. Yield of 50 megatons. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Nobody cares about any of this shit. What's the fuck? Oh, radius. There it is. Okay, the Tsar Bomba crater radius is. It keeps saying 60 miles wide, and that's not true. That's the mushroom cloud. Everything within 36 miles of the impact was vaporized, but severe damage extended to 150 miles. You're not telling me what I want to know. I want to know the fucking. Let's see. 150 miles was not the fucking. How big was the crater? 4,000 meters. Oh, wait. It detonated 4,000 meters above the island. The pressure wave reflection actually prevented the fireball from reaching the ground. The radius of the crater. Let's see. Oh, nobody's willing to tell me. Nobody's willing to tell me. But yeah, the pressure wave can actually be reflected, which is interesting. Yeah, they're saying the blast wave. Blast wave is different. Okay, blast wave is Blast wave is peak pressure. Is peak overpressure. So blast radius 8 kilometers. That's the blast radius. That's not the crater. Okay, the Tsar Bomba. The fireball was 8 kilometers wide at its maximum. Okay, that was 50 megatons. Sounds huge? Not. Okay. For those of you that live in Europe, 250. In America, 250 years is a long time. In Europe, 250 miles is a long drive. I have to go 50 miles to go to Walmart. Okay, they could hit that city with a nuke, and I'd wonder if there was a fucking semi driving by on the street outside, because it would be the same amount of vibration. Okay, that's why the star cluster is the go-to, because the damage radius is so magnified. It's also the triangle is the other one they do. But yeah, he's a fucking idiot. He did no research. Talking about strategic weaponry. No, they're not going to be lobbing ICBMs at each other at a range of 5 miles. Tactical, okay? Tactical nuclear weapons. Ugh. And then, I don't know if mad is a thing. It is genius. Ask anybody who lived through the 80s. Because it is real. I like to believe they still have people like me at the triggers. Like I was back then. I like to believe that. As weird as that sounds. Anyway, can you think of anything else?
It was good to have you debunk a lot of this shit and give us kind of the straight story, because I was getting so sick and tired of hearing so much shit come out of people's mouths.
Well,
and it's always entertaining.
I will say there are some people that are kind of hoping he pops a tac nuke in a modern city, because there has been a question that has been burning in everybody's mind since the way construction is done changed in the 50s and 60s. What would an atomic weapon do to a modern city? Because Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not modern cities; they were modern Japanese cities.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of bamboo, lots of wood, and it had been bombed the fuck out of for 4 years. The question has been, sure, the glass is going to shatter, but what would the blast do to a modern city? Skyscrapers are designed to lean. Skyscrapers are designed to handle high winds. How much damage is there actually going to? People have been wondering this since the 70s. And all of the estimations, are no good. We have to go based off of hurricanes. So, the scientific data alone would be amazing. If you want to look at it from my 20-year-old cold-blooded nature, the scientific data alone would be worth it. And if it happened, it might give us another round where people stop looking at nuclear weaponry as just a big boom, because it's not.
That is another one that really does need to go. That seems to have been an outgrowth of the war on terror. Did you notice that?
Yes, everybody thinks a nuclear weapon would just be a big boom. And the war on terror, I was disappointed when they did the invasion of Iraq and they were talking about, shock and awe, and I watched it on TV. I got to look, I was in Saudi Arabia when the air war started. And we watched the Air Force pound the living shit out of those tank divisions to the north of us. And that was shock and awe. What we saw on TV was not shock and awe. Okay, that was, what the fuck am I paying for? This is the shittiest light show I've ever seen. So everybody looks at nuclear weapons as you fire them and the city vanishes up its own ass. And that's not how it works. Of course, these are the people that think that napalm, you want to know how people think napalm works? Watch 28 Weeks Later, okay?
Oh God, I hate that scene. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that shit.
I didn't see it.
That shit in Syria makes people think that you could just shrug nerve gas really easily.
No.
And it turned out that all that shit was faked. Yeah, all the Syria gassings turned out to be fake. I was a little suspicious because they were missing certain symptoms that you see with chemical weapons. The vomit and the foam. They were missing vomit and foam. And they were missing signs of extensive seizures. especially for what they were supposedly being hit with. It should have caused foaming from the mouth and nose, bloody foam, and seizures, along with loss of bowels and bladder. But I wasn't seeing any of that. I was like, they sure they're using this? Sure they're using what they're talking about? Because organophosphate's pretty fucking VX is pretty fucking specific. I've seen it. I've seen it used on pigs. Anyway, but yeah, Tim Pool's dumb. He's fucking retarded. He needs to go back to fucking chickens and shut the fuck up. Look, Gonzo, I get it. You've got a microphone and read the fucking word strategic nuclear warfare, but go back to you want to do war tourism? Go down and sign up for the military. You want to learn about those nukes? Go sign up for Kimcorp. Go sign up. I don't know what they call. I don't know what they call the fucking nuclear command anymore because it's fucking buried under 19 layers of bullshit. Oh, and just so everybody knows, doesn't matter how senile Biden is. If he orders a new, I'm going to lay this to rest right now. When Nixon was being impeached, he came out and said, "You should not threaten the man with his finger on the button." Now, prior to that, they had worked to make it so that the authorization for nuclear weapons was cut all the way down to 7.5 minutes. From detection to launch, 7.5 minutes. Because Nixon said what he did, basically Atomic Command went and looked and said, we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So, the president, doesn't matter which president it is, despite what you hear about this shit of, Nancy Pelosi was trying to get the nuclear football to make sure Trump didn't launch nuclear weapons when he lost the election, and Miley was talking to the Chinese so that he knew that he wouldn't permit Trump. Okay, Trump says do it. It's got to go through about 5 layers. And yeah, it's speedy. And ultimately, the decision lies on the man on the ground. Doesn't matter if it's Trump. It doesn't matter if it's Biden. It doesn't matter if it's Senator douchebag from asshole Nebraska. If they say launch, the person underneath him goes, why? That's his whole job. Why? And they don't put yes men there. And then he goes, launch. And the next guy goes, why? You got 30 seconds to give me a reason. Usually transmit data. You can see what's going on. But the president is not the sole authority. And also, if the president and DC is knocked out, the chain of custody and chain of command goes all the way to the person in physical possession of the weapon. So no, the president can't get up all senile and scream into a fucking phone, nuke Russia now, and it happens. That's not how it works.
You mean it's nothing like the dead zone?
Yeah. That's not how it works.
Just going back to the 80s for a moment, the number of times my parents had hammered it into my head that is exactly how it is. And that's what Reagan was going to do.
If I would have gotten a launch order, I would have verified it with, I had certain phone numbers I could call to verify it. If I couldn't verify anything, then it became up to my discretion. But usually I would have been able to look up in the sky and seen all kind of vapor trails heading west. We would have already known what was going on. We got a direct feed that was just static and noise from a channel out of DC. And if that went dead, and the one in Omaha went dead, and the one in LA went dead, and the one in North, there were radio stations that bounced and were bounced by satellites, and you tuned in. If those stations were still broadcasting, those places were still there. There's all kind of safeguards. There is no president wakes up one morning and decides to nuke Taiwan. That's not how it works. So yeah, contrary to Hollywood and the movies, the system is pretty robust and pretty secure. Because otherwise, you should be very scared right now because you have a president that, upon hearing the Supreme Court decision today, got on TV and said that Ruth Bader Ginsburg needs to retire.
Did he do that?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And you have an aging KGB kleptocrat sitting in and then you have a bunch of feckless morons in Europe.
Hmm.
And people used to wonder why they fucking psych tested us every 6 months to a year.
The boomers can't die quick enough.
Oh, God, they're still hanging on.
If they'd just retired. If they'd just fucking retired when it was time.
Remember their slogan, he who dies with the most toys wins.
Yeah.
That was them. But yeah,
was,
so there's your depressing thing. If he fires off a nuke, we enter new and uncharted territory. NATO has to respond, or what's the use in it? But I'm going to come out and say it. I do not have faith in the current leadership. I do not believe they're brave enough. I do not believe they're logical enough. I do not believe they are determined enough. Because if he fires off a nuke, that means he believes, perhaps correctly, that they will not retaliate. But see, you don't need to retaliate with nukes.
Yeah.
There's other ways.
Well, again, the only way I could see him actually nuking anything is if he saw the end of Russia.
Yeah, because remember, he doesn't want scorched earth.
No, he wants that. He wants the Ukraine.
He wants the nation. He wants the people. He wants the cities. He wants the infrastructure. Firing off a nuclear weapon eliminates that section of the infrastructure. And he becomes an instant pariah.
Yeah, I think really that was the thing that was so scary about the war on terror is, back in the Cold War, the one thing that we had going for us was that neither side wanted a crater. Neither side wanted to come back to a crater after the war.
Right.
Whereas
and we ended up fighting people who hit themselves in the face with a hammer because it feels good when they stop.
Right. And, with Iran, they seem like they're perfectly happy with the apocalypse.
Because they don't think the other side has the guts to hit them back.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Times have changed. People have changed. I firmly believe that there's a large percentage of Americans that would surrender if they were threatened with being nuked. Just threatened.
Oh, California would do it in a heartbeat. I'll tell you that right now. The entire West Coast would.
And see, it wasn't like that 20 years ago.
Nope.
As recently as 2006, it was not like that. But no, I don't. If he does it, I'll be fucking amazed. And I'll be really interested. Then I'll pay attention to the news because I want to see what happens. I want to see if they spent 50 years talking shit or not. No, I want to see if I wasted my fucking life. I want to see if I wasted my youth. So yeah, I'll be personally insulted if they don't respond.
Well, yeah, if the U.S. does not respond or NATO does not respond to something like that, they instantly become worthless. There's no point in it.
But then you have to look at it. Number one, Ukraine's not a NATO member and should not be. Okay, number one, you're not supposed to be able to join NATO if you're in the middle of a war. You're not supposed to be able to do that. And them pushing is just trying to get NATO in there because Ukraine is losing. Sorry, Ukraine is losing. It's obvious. Technically, from a NATO standpoint, from my old job, if he hit Ukraine, I'd be like, who gives a fuck? It's fucking potato faggots. Who cares? All right. Who really cares what the potato smugglers are doing? Well, they nuked each other. Why do I give a fuck? Who cares? Contrary to the whole thing, Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. Really? Because they haven't been shipping shit out and it hasn't seemed to affect anything. Maybe if we stop making shitty corn for genetically engineered corn for ethanol, things would be different.
I don't understand the obsession with Ukraine. I really don't.
Easy.
Yeah.
Prior to the invasion, its number one export was child porn.
Well, I feel ill.
That explains a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Ukraine, have you seen what Grifty Z looks like lately?
No,
he looks like. I was just gonna say he looks like Hitler when Hitler was tweaking out during the Olympics.
Well, Well, he thought that we'd come rushing in and send like 101st Airborne to save him. Well, the real fucked up thing is, we should not have gotten involved when Ukraine and Russia tried to decide on a peace treaty early on. Not Biden himself, but the administration jumped up and down and screamed no.
Yeah.
And Europe jumped up and down and screamed no. So they just kept the war going. Congratulations. The problem with the war on terror is it made everybody think it's what they watch on TV. They think it's like when America fights. We're very careful to minimize civilian casualties. We're very careful to minimize damage to the civilian structures. We're very careful not to inconvenience civilians. But that's not real war. Anyway.
So,
you want to see? Yeah. No, I was going to say, you want to see real war? Look at Ukraine now. Look at Gaza. They're turning Gaza into a parking lot. And to be honest, I don't fucking care anymore. I hope both sides lose.
I think we're all on the same page with that one.
I want Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Gaza to all lose. I don't know. I don't know how it's possible, but I want them all to lose. Why? Because I'm tired of it. The PLO's been blowing up airplanes since the Palestinians have been blowing up airplanes since the 1960s. Israel's been putting their thumb in everybody's eye around them and fucking I'm sorry, stop sticking your thumb in their fucking eye. And Russia is a garbage fire and Ukraine's not much better. The people are decent. The people that live there are decent. I met Russians. They were nice people. I like them. People are fine. I just wish that everybody would lose. And hey, maybe Tim Pool will be proved wrong and mad will happen. Then everybody loses. I mean, that's how everybody loses. But people.
I was just going to say he'd be happy about that because then he'd be quote unquote proven true until the mutated hillbillies come to kill him.
He's in West Virginia.
Yeah,
he's in West Virginia. Yeah. You know what else nuclear weapons cause? Firestorms.
Oh shit.
Do you know what burns really good? Wood.
Coal too.
Coal and wood. You think the Centralia fire was something? Wait till you see a couple of those places get hit.
Oh shit.
Where the underground coal seams caught on fire.
Yeah.
Wait until that shit happens.
On fire.
Yeah, wait till that shit happens, y'all. Oh, I have my compound. I'm in the middle of the woods. How close are you to one of the clandestine military bases out there that are going to get hit? Bet you don't know.
Well, that's okay. He's also got his van.
He's got his van.
I think he thinks that West Virginia, if it gets hit, is going to be like Fallout 76. I'm not joking. I think he truly believes that.
The number of pop culture references he makes as if it's reality is kind of frightening.
Well, the Fallout universe goes along with we never developed hydrogen bombs.
Yeah, we also didn't develop the transistor till the eve of the war. Really interesting timeline.
Yeah, actually, the transistor was an accident. When I took electronic engineering, they taught us about it. The transistor was an accident.
Really?
And it completely revolutionized everything. Transistors are so small now that they're microscopic.
Yeah, my dad told me about it. It was an accident. Of course, my dad liked weird facts about that.
A lot of science is that way, though.
And at first, they didn't even know what they had. God. Yeah, a transistor is actually, when you look at what goes into it, is actually, it's like, that's pretty fucking simple. And it happened because they wired something up wrong. I can't remember what they wired up wrong. God, my brain's so full of stupid shit.
It's amazing how much science really did benefit from not why, but why not?
Why not?
Really?
Science has always benefited from what happens if I do this.
I mean, shit, what was it? NutraSweet was invented because the woman who invented it just decided, hey, this looks like sugar, and tasted it.
Yeah, NutraSweet didn't NutraSweet turn out to be like cause cancer in like steel?
In steel?
No, it's a joke.
What the hell? No, it turned, was it saccharin
was terrible. Yeah. Okay, saccharin that will cause, cancer in like rocks.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Splenda. Splenda tastes like ass. It's a sugar replacement. What's wrong with just good old cane sugar? Nothing. Oh, well, what about, we replaced the good old cane sugar with high fructose corn syrup. Oh, that's why. Has anybody else noticed all the little Debbie treats and all the Hostess treats all taste like fucking ass now?
That's why I don't
Yeah.
eat them.
I used to love it. The first of every month, I get myself a little box of one of the little Debbie's or Hostess things, And recently, they've all started tasting like complete garbage.
They taste like chemicals.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Hostess isn't Hostess anymore. I mean, real Hostess went out of business several years ago.
And Chinese company bought them.
I remember everybody was buying Twinkies like mad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most American companies are owned by China.
That's right.
There's a
I'm
lot of
so
American
old.
companies.
I remember when candy tasted good.
Yes. I remember when candy tasted good.
I remember when soda tasted good. Real
Yeah.
cane sugar and 7-Up and Coca-Cola. Oh my goodness.
You
Root
could tell
beer.
when they changed the formula to high fructose corn syrup in
Yeah.
the 90s. Because the taste changed and it suddenly became like it was thicker.
Yeah.
And loaded with salt.
Yeah, loaded with salt. I remember when A&W root beer was the best shit out there.
That
I
was
bought
so good.
I bought a homemade sarsaparilla at the state fair, and that was so fucking good.
Okay, yeah, that shit's
The
amazing.
homemade lemonade. Dudes were just ripping lemons up and making it right there and pouring whole fucking pitchers full of white grain sugar into the lemonade and just making it right there. They pour it on the ice, and God, it was so good because it was like 100 degrees that day. That's where I got you the alien.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
He's referring to this sip mug or sippy glass thing.
Yeah,
that's shaped like a gray alien. that he sent me.
Yeah, I saw that. Thought of you. But yeah, Tim Pool isn't what he's talking about. For one thing, tactical battlefield weapon. He doesn't know that the tactical battlefield weapons were actually designed for anti-tank and anti-artillery. You don't use it on infantry. So if you look at it tactically, what with the state of the Ukrainian lines, what does he fucking hit that he can't accomplish with conventional explosives? Nothing. It has all these drawbacks for him and nothing tactically or strategically worthwhile.
It would be a politically bad move in general.
Yeah. And plus the ground would be irradiated for, 40 years. Well, 15 years. 10, 15 years.
Yeah, guys,
what use is it?
Well, yeah, we should call it a night.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say real quick before we go, this is definitely a thing all over the news. I've been flipping through some social media. I've been like looking up stuff. You guys talked about it. And now Bloomberg is also doing the whole opinion. If you think World War III is unimaginable, read this. So yeah, the fear mongering is ramping up again.
Well, yeah, the primaries are still going on.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we have the primaries are tomorrow here. I put in for the Emperor of Mankind. I wrote in the Emperor of Mankind for my presidential vote.
Nice.
That's how much I fucking hate Biden.
Oh, here it is. A 10 megaton bomb detonated optimal altitude, medium damage to 9.4 miles from ground zero. 100 megaton bomb, same amount of damage, 20.3 miles. So see, it's 10 times the effect and only gets you a little more than double. I cannot remember. I can't remember anymore. And if they dropped it on New York, if they dropped the Tsar Bomba on New York, a lot of shit north of Yonkers and south of and half of Staten Island would survive. Not too well, but it still survive. So they're not the big, humongous things everybody thinks. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's just fascinating, and we wanted the opinion. I mean, that's why we did this show. And
the real
hopefully,
go ahead.
Oh, hopefully, all of you will now invade Tim Pool's chat next time he starts shooting his mouth off.
Tell him he's a retard.
That'd be kind of worth it. Get some hair plugs.
Yeah, get some fucking hair plugs.
You're not fooling anyone.
Okay, so should we call it a night?
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Remember that Ralt and I both write books, and you can find links to them in the description. And thank you for joining us. And yeah, if Tim shoots his mouth off and you happen to be in the chat, tell him to get hair plugs. Good night, everyone.